I want to first of all ask you about how much you've been earmarking for vaccines and whether that will come out of this year's budget or next year's.
Well, clearly, we have been saying that we are going to keep everything that is required to get the vaccine going. The logistics and the cold chain and are all being worked out at the level of the districts in the states. So I'm unable to now this minute give you an exact number of what kind of amounts are being kept aside. But clearly the government has committed itself that it shall allot as much as required. And you know the pace at which the administration is working in getting the logistics ready. We've had review meetings at the level of the Prime Minister with the state provincial chiefs, elected representatives who are called chief ministers in India. And other than that, of course, you have, just as you have given the introduction, there are Serum Institutes, Bharat Biotech, and others who are coming up for emergency use certifications.
Okay. You know, the economy there, of course, entering a technical recession, but it does seem some anecdotal evidence that we've even had the MasterCard Asia-Pacific co-president on earlier. We've had various CEOs on this program, all suggesting that things are getting better. What are you seeing on the ground right now?
Not just anecdotal evidence, but also the PMI data, both for PMI manufacturing and services, since August have shown a real uptick. And they're all additional numbers, meaning the PMI managers index is clearly showing additional investments, additional demand are all being generated. Private investment is also coming through, particularly in the core sectors like cement, steel, and so on. So those additional investments clearly are coming on the back of consistent but persistent demand. And therefore, I think this is going to be sustained into the next year.
Minister, during this pandemic, how would you rate your government's actions? And is there anything that the government could have done better in dealing with it?
Well, I wouldn't be the person to rate because I'm part of the decision-making process here. But honestly, I think for a large country with so much of diversity and also differences in terrain, as you're aware of, the best decision was to take was the lockdown. So that during the lockdown, the facilities which had to be brought on board were brought on, having ensured that the lives are being saved, food was given to those who deserve it, those who are poor, cash was given, cooking medium was given, and so on. After which, along with the provincial governments, we made sure that in phases, lockdown was released, meaning unlocking was happening. And there couldn't have been as much as we know today. With the benefit of hindsight later, people can always assess. But as much as we know today, these were the best steps to take because both the center and the state deal with health-related matters. It couldn't have been just a union government's decision.
Minister, people on this program have come on and said that they see the RBI, the Reserve Bank, having done what it could and is doing what it can. They've really accused your ministry of not doing enough in terms of stimulus. What can you do more? What guarantees can you give and elaborate more on specific fiscal measures that may well boost demand and create jobs, such as you have done in rural areas?
You're right in observing the RBI has done its measures, but between the RBI and the Ministry of Finance, we've tried doing a very clear balancing between the fiscal measures and the monetary measures. Liquidity was a severe problem even slightly before the coronavirus hit us. And therefore, measures taken for improving liquidity were very much the need of the hour, and therefore the RBI did come in. And Government of India, in the sense Ministry of Finance, has given a stimulus up to 10%, both RBI and us put together. And the way in which the stimulus was given after hearing the stakeholders who needed it most, who needed it in which way, were all worked out. And that is why I think the tailoring of the stimulus was very targeted. And because of that, you see demand revival now. I admit that nothing would be enough. How much ever you would do, there's need to do more because the severity of the pandemic was such. But I must admit, between the government and the Reserve Bank, there's been a workable balance. And I also draw lessons from countries which have spent more than 20% of their GDP, 15% of their GDP, right at the beginning of the pandemic. And today I am also hearing from such countries that they are probably looking to increase taxation. I think all of us are sharing one another's experience as a learning. And what we've done in India is probably worked for India. Otherwise, we wouldn't have the sustained demand revival now.
Minister, you talked about signs of recovery. How quickly do you think India's economy can shake off the recession? What shape of recovery are you anticipating?
Well, I'm glad to say here that both the IMF and the Reserve Bank of India, the Central Bank of India, have very clearly seen good recovery happening even in the third quarter, which is the running quarter, and the fourth quarter. And therefore, I think that, as once I said earlier, even this year, we should be able to shirk off a lot of what baggage fell on us in the quarter one. However, sustained good positive recovery is what I see from the beginning of the next fiscal, from the first quarter of next fiscal itself.
What part of the economy will drive growth going forward? Are you perhaps concerned that consumption could take a hit now that the festive season is over?
Well, in India, you're right in saying that the festival season drives a lot of additional demand, which is otherwise not prevalent during the year. But however, the festival season may have started in September, but it normally lasts till middle of January because of different regions having different localized festivals, which also drive demand. But post that, the season is of summer, and summer has its own demands coming from the rural area. Now, the specific question that you asked about what kinds of sectors that I see revival coming from, and therefore demand push, is rural, as I said. When I say rural, I'm not just talking of agriculture, but agriculture-related, agriculture-driven sectors, whether it's your tractor, whether it's your agriculture tool, whether it is food processing, and so on. And I also see that the migrant workers issue has been sort of sorted out in the rural areas because of the employment package which we had announced during the pandemic. And now you see that many of the industries have also done a lot of reset in the way in which they're doing businesses. And I guess, therefore, it'll be the tier 2, tier 3 cities which are going to push demand, which we are seeing even now, and that will gradually trickle over to the cities.